Long before there was America, there was the idea of America, a place where you could worship freely and discuss revolutionary ideas like democracy and equality, a place where you could make a new life for yourself and your family through the labor of your own hands, a place where hard work, new ideas, and resilience counted more than your luck at birth. In 1931, James Treslow Adams called that idea the American dream. For more than 200 years, millions of people from every corner of the world have come to our shores looking for opportunity, safety, reinvention. We are not all immigrants. Some arrived in chains. But we have, over time, shared one powerful common belief, that the American dream should embrace us all equally, give us all opportunity, dignity, and hope, and give each generation hope for a better and more just future.
I remember that my father told me one day that if people feel they don't have a chance at, quote, the American dream, or they don't have a chance at upward mobility, then it won't be a good life for our kids or our grandkids. And so everyone has to feel they have a chance.
Today, many feel the American dream is out of reach or was never really available for them or their community. The Milken Center for Advancing the American Dream has been established in the historic heart of Washington, D.C. to broaden access to opportunity and reignite economic mobility and hope. We will tell the inspirational stories of everyday change makers who embody the American dream and connect our visitors to new pathways toward realizing their own dreams. We'll confront the institutional and personal barriers that limit opportunity in education, health, business, entrepreneurship, and innovation. We'll amplify innovative solutions, serving as a marketplace for new ideas on advancing economic and social mobility for people everywhere. We are here to preserve and protect this generation's right to define and pursue their own dreams. We believe that it's not enough to have lived the American dream. You must also make it possible for someone else to live it. Join us and help us keep the dream alive for the next generation, in America and for people everywhere who want to work toward a free, equal, and more prosperous tomorrow.
Please welcome the panel on Service as a Springboard to the American Dream, moderated by MSNBC anchor Alex Witt.
I like the picture up there better. Anyway, hi everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Those of you that are here in person and those of you that are joining us remotely and that will be joining us when you decide to watch what promises to be an incredible hour, given the minds and experience and talents of all four of us who are here. Before I introduce the panel, though, I do want to acknowledge the woman in the video who was really the star of that video. Yay. And that is Carrie Healy. Carrie, thank you so much for your leadership on all of this. She is the president of the Milken Center for Advancing the American Dream. She has talked about any number of things during her illustrious career and the things that she is really hoping that we will address today, which I'm going to do my best to do for you. And also, I understand there's going to be a visitor center at the building. You've promised me a tour. I will be there. I suggest everybody go because it'll be nothing short of inspiring. So thank you so much. So let's start with some introductions. I will start there to my left. Dr. Timothy Shriver, who's chairman of Special Olympics International, co-founder of Unite. He's got a lot of special things to him, but for those of you who have lived under a rock over the last, I don't know, a few decades, this comes to him naturally. He's got it in his DNA. Timothy, of course, is the nephew of President John F. Kennedy, who did a wonderful thing with the Peace Corps, and he has picked up the mantle that was also carried on by your mother and father, Eunice and Sargent. So thank you so much. He's got 5 kids. I make that point because a lot of what we're going to talk about has to do with kids, people of a certain age, ideally maybe 18 to 24, though I don't think volunteerism is ever excluded from any age. So thank you, Tim, for being here. Dr. Eduardo Padron, he himself is remarkable. Wait, how many doctorate honorary degrees do you have? Is like 15, or are there more now?
It's about 18.
Okay, 18. Slipping, okay. So he is the president emeritus of Miami-Dade College, and he also has done extraordinary things, including 2016 being the recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor bestowed upon him by President Barack Obama. Pretty darn cool. Josh, we've established we're California kids here along with Abby. Josh Fryday, he works for the state of California. He is I want to get your official title. You're the Chief Service Officer for the state of California, which is a pretty remarkable gig.
Cool, right?
It's very cool. Of course it would come from California. You've done some pretty extraordinary things. You're focusing a lot on climate. We're going to talk about that. The ability to help defray the cost of higher education for a lot of the kids out there. It's a service thing. We're going to get into that with you. You also have 3 kids running around, so maybe they'll be doing volunteerism in their future.
They absolutely will be.
That's a good one. And finally, Abby Fallick. Abby is pretty remarkable herself as well. She is the president of the Global Citizen, let me make sure I have it, Global Citizen Year, appropriately named Global Citizen Year. You're hoping to inspire people to devote some time, the breakdown of which could be, you know, just service or training and the like, but you think that kind of post-high school age is a great age to get kids, and maybe your 2 kids will do that as well. But I also have to, before we start the conversation, you have a massive announcement to make.
I do,
which is
Alex.
Extraordinary.
Thank you. The timing of this couldn't be better. So I am here to break some news this morning, which is we've just received at Global Citizen Year a $12 million investment from Mackenzie Scott and Dan Jewett, her husband. And this is a breakthrough gift that is going toward the launch of our New Leaders Fund, a $50 million commitment that allows us to launch a critical mass of the leaders our world needs now. So honored to be here today on this panel. Thank you. Very excited about what this means for the organization and really for the world, for the next generation of global citizens and leaders.
Let me ask you, Abby, why is it that you think this age group is the age group to get? I mean, it's not just about giving kids something to do. I mean, it's not that at all. It's also about their own personal development. It's really, you're looking at so many different things. It's improving the human condition for a lifetime.
I think about my own experience, finishing high school and feeling like I'd been a, quote, excellent sheep running on that treadmill and scrambling that high-stakes game to get into college. I'd gotten into Stanford, and yet I knew something was really missing. I had a deep intuition that there was more to learn than what I was learning in a classroom, and ever since I have been fixated on how we can create a new pathway out of secondary school into young adulthood for young people from a broad set of backgrounds. I remember calling the Peace Corps, actually, as an 18-year-old, and they said, go to college, we'll see you soon. And I was frustrated because I looked around and we invite young people into military service or religious service. There are rites of passage that religious communities and cultures around the world have invested in for generations. And yet in this country, we fly by that transition as though it's not something to really shine a light on, to create a space where young people can step back and put their life in a broader context, to learn who they are, who they're becoming, who they want to be in the world, and how they can orient their life around making a difference and having an impact.
Yeah, and you know, Tim, when we were talking on the conference call before this meeting, you mentioned both things that Abby just mentioned. Military service, how that is something that does the concept of what we're trying to do really well. Also religious communities. You spoke specifically about the Jesuit community and what they have done to really focus on service. So talk about your interpretations of what they do and how that can be more broadly expanded.
Yeah, well, I think it's so interesting that we've come to a point where we almost reflexively opt for the introductory comments you made, which is that service is not just about helping them, but helping those who serve. And I think that's helping us lean into still another level, which is the ways in which service allows us to join ourselves to a larger story. It's actually not just about the Peace Corps volunteer or the California volunteer, and it's not just about who they help. It's about crafting, in a sense, a connection, a relationship. The biblical texts that so many of the religious traditions draw on refer to people as being healers of the breach. And they invite us to see there's some split in our lives. There's some separation between us and others. There's some gap that at a deeper level we all hunger to heal. And children will raise their hands and say, I want to help you at a very early age. They want to help their moms. They want to help their dads. They want to dig use the shovel. They want to hammer the nail. They want to bake the cookies. They want to bridge the gap between themselves and the adults around them. And that continues throughout life. And in a time right now where the country is so deeply divided, in fact, most liberal democracies are deeply divided, and where division is the default position, I think of service not just as a nice to do or a good thing to help shape, people in their developmental window. Rites of passage, very important, I agree. But at a much deeper level, as an opportunity to reinvigorate and reframe a story of us. Pope Francis refers to service as an encounter, not as a transaction, not as a gift from one person to another, not as a way of solving a problem, although we do solve problems when we serve, but as a meeting, as a chance to actually look eye to eye at someone from whom you're separated. So I think at some level, this long American conversation about civic engagement that goes back to the founding, as we said in the video, it's a long conversation in our country about building the story of us. We don't come with one story, none of us do. We come from many stories. So our country has always had to have people who create a story for the whole.
Yeah.
It's never been perfect, never maybe even been close, but we've always been at it in some ways. The video says this, we haven't got it right, but we've been at it. We've been at building this story of us. Today, if you ask me, it is the #1 job in our country. If we don't solve this problem of the gap, of the breach, this is what the prophet Isaiah refers to, the breach. If we don't solve that problem, we don't make it. I mean, American Dream will be a nice thing in history books that people will read about in new countries and wonder whether it's applicable. It will be a matter of the past. We don't want the museum of the American Dream. We want the creative energy to build a new story that will actually allow a new American dream to emerge.
So we're going to get to this in a moment. You mentioned the division in the country. Amen to that. That's true. But the division in the country, and I'm delighted to say we will talk about an act that has been introduced in the Senate, the CORE Act, and that does have wide bipartisan support, as it should when you think about this job and what you're asking of people. But statistically, let's talk about those that get involved. I think the numbers are 3,800,000 high school graduates every year in this country, of whom approximately 3,500,000 go on to some level of college. Pretty cool. 80,000 go on and do some level of service. Part of what this act is going for, the CORE Act being introduced bipartisan again in the Senate, they're hoping to get 250,000 devoted to service. And there will be incentives to do that as well, helping to defray the cost of college, helping to do some training so that people who aren't quite really sure at the young age of 18 exactly what they want to do, it can help them figure out those kinds of things. But one of the big problems about service is it has an image that it has been heretofore afforded to an elite community, right? And I know that my two kids had wonderful high school educations and went on to college. We talked about gap years for them where they would do this for reasons I won't bore you with. They weren't able to do it, although my son took off a year during college at a later time to do some work. But Eduardo, this really speaks to what you have spent your life devoted to, which is allowing a diverse pool not only of access to volunteerism, but also higher education. It is something that, you have so many accolades for what you've done, but what are the big challenges with that? How can we better afford this for a broader group of young people? Let them, is it about informing them, providing access? Is it about money? All three?
Well, I think I have good news for you.
Oh, good.
Yes. You know, it's really unrealistic to expect some certain students who come from underserved communities to really have the luxury of spending a gap year or a term of service, because most of the students, and speaking my own experience at Miami-Dade College, where 67% of the students are low income, 48% of them are poor under federal standards. And these students, most of them cannot even go to school full time because they have to work and go to school, so they go part-time most of the time. So saying I'm gonna take a year off or a semester off is really a luxury they cannot afford. So what we have done is to find creative ways and probably even better ways to instill in the students a sense of purpose, a sense of commitment, and the opportunity for civic engagement. And that is connecting civic learning and so forth into the curriculum. And so all the courses have the opportunity with the professors to get the students involved in problem solving and connecting to their communities. And that has been sort of revolutionary. More and more institutions are adopting that. It's what in some places is called a problem-based learning, which means that it's an opportunity for the students to connect the content of the course to the solutions of societal problems. And what that has given is better retention in these courses. It has really produced more completion of the courses because the students are finding meaning. You know, I love this generation of students because what I find is that they're looking for a sense of purpose. They are looking for a way of connecting and being part of the solution of problems. They want to be problem solvers. And connecting the curriculum to that, I think is a magic way and a great way for the students to find a way. And doing it through the course, they don't have to take, you know, a semester-long sort of project. And I think we have seen the results. The students love it. As a matter of fact, I was looking at we did a survey of 23,000 students recently. And this is what I found, and I'll be quickly on that. 89% of them, as a result of having had the experience of service learning, are interested in staying involved in service. 91% say the service learning opportunities through the courses need to be included in more courses. And 91% feel that service learning helped them see how course content can be applied in everyday life, which I think is wonderful. So the idea that underserved communities, students who come from underserved communities do not have the opportunity for service learning is not true. I think we need to be creative and find ways to connect them to these opportunities, and more colleges and universities are doing that very successfully.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand what government can do to help facilitate all these things that we're talking about today. And as the Chief Service Officer of the state of California, you also are sort of harnessing things that the young kids are passionate about, climate being a major one these days. I mean, how often do we see the demonstrations and kids talking about it, whether it's recycling or global warming or whatever it is they can do? Talk about the initiative that you have here in California, where kids are working on that front, and they're also getting something from California, which is help with the higher expense, cost, college, graduate school, any of it.
Sure, excited to talk about California's Climate Action Corps, which is an initiative that Governor Newsom and California volunteers launched just last year to really create a culture of climate action here in California. And of course it starts with big policies, and California has long led on aggressive policies to deal with climate change. But here in California, Governor Newsom really believes that if we're going to actually tackle some of our biggest problems, and if we're actually going to bring our communities together to do that, we have to harness the power of our most important asset, which is the 40 million people who call California home. So we have to create opportunities for people to engage at all levels. And we created the Climate Action Corps to, one, create a service opportunity for young people who wanted to spend a summer or semester or a year of their life being a climate organizer in frontline low-income communities around California that are already affected by climate change. We've also created a volunteer hub so that you can find out how to volunteer in your community with an organization that's doing important climate work. And then we're calling on all Californians to take climate action. This is a critical aspect, I think, of what Governor Newsom's trying to do, which is to say we need everyone on the field. We need everyone in the game participating, taking action at home, and we provide the resources to do it. And I should say, because I would get in trouble if I didn't say this, Alex, so if you'll allow me, that it's such an honor to be on this panel, and to thank you to the Milken Institute for putting together this really important topic. But when I was appointed Chief Service Officer by Governor Newsom, I was given mandatory reading, which was the biography of Sarge Shriver, who Governor Newsom often talks about as his political hero. And he often tells us that our job is to build off the legacy of not just Sarge Shriver, but of the work done by Maria Shriver here in California.
Who's here?
Who's
Hi,
here
Maria.
in the audience. And so we're very proud of what we're doing around Climate Action Corps. We're very proud of what next year we're going to be launching what we call the California GI Bill to do exactly what we just spoke about, which is provide debt-free pathways for thousands of California students who commit to do a year of service while they're in school, working on climate change, food insecurity, tutoring and mentoring for low-income students affected by COVID loss or learning loss during COVID. And so what Governor Newsom is really trying to do, what we're trying to do, is not just say we need everyone in the game, but to actually create the opportunities and put the investment and the dollars behind our values to bring people together in a critical way.
Dollars. Okay. How does this kind of thing get paid for? Because that's going to be where you might find, I mean, theoretically, philosophically, this is great.
Yep.
Who in the world could, argue any of these points that we're all making here? But when it comes down to paying for it, what's California's plan? How much of it is governmentally based? How much of it is private industry based? How do you get the money to do it?
It's a great question. It's a combination of everything. Government cannot do this alone. That's a critical message, that we need business helping with this. We need universities at the table in a big way. So everyone needs to have skin in the game when we're talking about protecting our democracy, really, and strengthening all of society. But it takes leaders putting their money where their mouth is. I think it was President Biden who famously said, don't tell me your values, show me your budget and I'll tell you your values. And Governor Newsom next year is investing $150 million into this college program so that low-income students can serve and go to college at the same time and have those career opportunities. But to launch Climate Corps, to your point, to answer your question, it was a public-private partnership. We had incredible supporters like Wendy Abrams and many other here in California who step up to partner with government to create a public-private partnership so that we're actually creating service opportunities for young people.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Yep, go ahead, Abby.
Well, I think we also have to think about the cost of not doing this.
Good point.
So it is not just an additional cost, but when you look at the data that shows that just 3% of young people finishing college believe they had a transformative experience, that 96% of college presidents say their kids are ready for the workforce when they graduate, and 11% of employers agree. We have a generation of students with record levels of anxiety, depression, mental health concerns that have only been exacerbated during COVID. And the idea that young people finding their passion or their purpose can be a privilege reserved for a select few is something we need to move beyond. We need pathways that allow young people, exactly as Dr. Padron said, to connect with something that breaks their heart. To figure out what it is that wakes them up in the morning when there's no alarm clock, what syllabus they want to put together when it's not handed to them, who their teachers are when they're not assigned. This must be a birthright. And if we can't find the resources to do that, we are risking that an entire generation does not have the opportunity to reach their full potential.
Yeah. So Eduardo, you come from the academic side of things. How much responsibility does lie, to Josh's point, in the academic institutions? What can they do to help promote this? Is it part of a curriculum, really? Do you think that should be offered?
Well, I feel that an institution, any academic organization, whether it's a college or a university, that must be one of their top priorities. Because not only we're teaching students to become professionals in their chosen field, But I think higher education has a responsibility to build citizens who are responsible and who are civically engaged. That is crucial. And I think, fortunately, most of the universities nowadays are understanding that. There are a lot of organizations that have surfaced to be able to support universities in this effort, especially Campus Compact, which is a national organization, but there are also state chapters that are basically supporting the work of colleges and universities. I think it's something that really reinforces the academic mission of the institution. It instills confidence and responsibility on the students, because let's face it, democracy is not just about privileges, it's also about responsibilities. You know, we enjoy the right of the freedoms, many of the freedoms, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, the ability to elect our officials, but what about responsibilities that we have to build the nation, to continue to provide opportunities for citizens to come together and protect the democracy that we enjoy? And if the universities do not do that, who else is going to do it? That's the age when the students need to be able to identify with the values they hold dear. This is when they assume understand the responsibility they have as citizens. And let me tell you something. What I find is that employees, when looking at an application, it's not just the grades and it's not just what they did, but the fact that the students committed part of their time to be able to be supportive of their community, helping others that are less fortunate, I think is very, very valuable. There is an award that our government, there's the highest award one of the highest awards that the White House provides, which is the Public Service Award. At my institution, 6,000 students have already received that award.
Impressive.
We have had in the last few years over 150,000 students who have been engaged in service. And over 1,000 of our professors have realized how important it is to include civic engagement as part of their courses. So I think that is something that is coming together. What I think is lacking in this nation is making sure that there is a call to action. There is a call to service. We need to do that. For years, we've been talking about it. The Aspen Institute has created task forces. The Council on Foreign Relations has done the same thing. There are different organizations that are talking about it throughout the last few years, but there has not been a cohesion of all these forces coming together to really instill that passion for service that I think, as was said by my friends here, is so important for building this country in a way that will strengthen our principles.
Which is something, Tim, that you talk about, and yes, worthy applause. You know, the passion in all of this. How is it that you can inspire young people to think, I gotta get off the treadmill, I can't just go? I mean, my generation, there really wasn't that much opportunity for it. It was, you know, you were expected to finish high school, get on to college, get out there and get working. And how can we avoid the confusion as to thinking that it is an either or? Because it's not. I mean, if you're gonna get out into service, you can be trained, you can develop certain personal skills, professional skills down the road, and take your passion and put it all together.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting, 'cause I'm drawn as I'm listening to Dr. Padron and others to maybe introduce some of the work that has been done in the field of social and emotional learning. And that's a field that I, together with other people, helped create about almost a quarter of a century ago. And the theme of that work was that we had separated our deepest desires, the children's deepest desires, their hunger for belonging, for purpose, for relationship, from their academic life. And as a result, we were sub-optimizing learning because many children didn't feel connected either to the topic, to the school, or to the adults in the school, not to mention to their peers. When you break relationships, when relationships are weak, learning is weak. So we built a whole field, which is now quite well known, called social and emotional learning. Not just to tell people they ought to serve, or not just to tell people they ought to have purpose, but to actually give them the building blocks. So you can teach children at 6 and 7 years old how to self-regulate. You can teach children how to strengthen their listening skills. You can actually, there's a curriculum for how to listen for positive intent, how to listen for understanding, not for conflict, how to listen in order to give people feedback about what they want, not what you think they should do. You can teach that to fourth graders. Now, when you do this well, when we do this well as a culture, not only, to Dr. Padron's point, not only do you help them find their purpose, their sense of desire, belonging, trust, safety in school, all these things grow actually quite quickly. It's quite remarkable. But you also optimize learning. You learn more, you're more motivated, you're more likely to see a purpose for yourself in the future. Why? Because you've brought all of you to the conversation. Mm-hmm. So just one quick story. I was doing a focus group on this issue of national unity and division with a group of young people. We did them all over the country. And one young woman said to me, a ninth grader, she said, you know, in our school, we've had this work, we've done work in social and emotional, we're talking about cliques and bullying. I kept pressing. Are there cliques? Are there divisions? Are there animosities between groups? And she said at one point, just one kid said in a sort of exasperated sense, you know, we got over that here in our school. She said, there's no real bullying here anymore. The problem is adults are bullies. Now, I bring that up because we can do all the work we want to tell kids to find their purpose, to help them cross cultural boundaries, to teach them the competencies of service, compassion. They don't see it in us. They don't think they're the problem. They think we're the problem. They think the rest of the culture that lionizes hatred and division and bullying is the problem. So we've got to own that this is not about kids. We have a little bit, I'm going to be a little bit provocative, but I think we have a little bit of a branding problem in our space here. The language of service, we tested it a few years ago, I don't know if you guys have too, doesn't resonate that much with young people. They don't want to think of themselves as being involved in service. It seems patronizing, hierarchical, arrogant, condescending. They want to be involved in change. They want to be involved in meaning. They want to be involved in building a more just future. They don't really want, like, to say, I'm doing my service here. It's a little bit off the bullseye right now.
Is there a word that's being offered to use in place?
Well, I was about to ask.
Oh, I do that a lot. Sorry.
You jumped the gun. So I don't know exactly what the right word is, but there is some dimension of building justice and purpose, meaning. These are words that resonate with people, and not just with kids, with adults. Yeah. You talked about the epidemics of loneliness and depression, opiate addiction. They cross the age range. It's not just our kids. It's not just our kids. It's 35, 45, 55, even older men and women. So we have a larger hunger in the culture right now for purpose, and a larger hunger in all of us for connection. And if we don't name it as our issue, and we sort of pigeonhole it as this is what we do for kids, we miss the chance to actually learn from kids who are learning themselves how to do this, but they're asking us to step up to the plate too.
Yeah. Abby, pick up on that, because I think when you spoke about the 18 to 24 was sort of the ideal group to go here, it's not just the kids. I mean, these are definitely young adults. And the way that pursuing one's passion can then be funneled into a lifelong commitment, whether it's professionalism or just what you do on the side.
Well, neurologically, developmentally, we know that the 18-year-old brain, you've got the maturity to leave home, but you haven't yet fixed your values and your identity. There is no more prime moment to intervene with an experience that takes you out of your comfort zone, that forces you to confront your identity from a new perspective, that helps you stretch and learn things about how to connect across lines of difference. And I just want to come back to what Tim said about the language. I think it could not be more essential that we think about how to rebrand the things that we're talking about here. Service as a concept is not resonant for Gen Z for the reasons Tim described. We need better language in the same way that the terminology around a gap year has always been off. If you think about it, the metaphor is exactly wrong. It suggests that you're falling into a gaping hole that you might or might not come out of, let alone all of the associations we now have with it, which is that it's elite, it's expensive, it's a luxury, and it's a sort of frivolous thing to add to your resume, as opposed to what this could be. We like to call it a purpose year, a launch year, an impact year, and for us specifically, it's a global citizen year. We believe that young people from the US and from around the world need to view their civic identity in the context of a global community, to recognize that the challenges we're facing, and it's never been clearer, from the pandemic to our climate crisis, need to be showing us that we are all on the same team, even though we don't yet realize or acknowledge it.
So can I just to make a point, and I'm going to come back to what Josh was saying a little bit earlier. The brand issue is a big one, in part because the messaging is a little bit out of date. I say this with complete respect for my parents and uncles' generation but I mean, just because something worked in 1960 doesn't mean you replicate it. It means you update it and you adopt it for a new time and you get what's best about it. And no one's done this better. Josh already mentioned than my sister Maria building these platforms, who's here, and when she was First Lady of California, but also as a journalist and storyteller. This panel next time around should have maybe, one or two of these distinguished people, but the rest of the group ought to be people who are brand builders and storytellers and narrators of a new story of us. And that's actually, in some ways, what we took for granted when President Kennedy said, "Ask not what you can do, what your country can do for you." He told a new story to Americans. He didn't tell them where to serve. He didn't actually know what the Peace Corps would look like. My dad used to tell these incredibly funny stories about no one had any idea what the Peace Corps. I mean, it was just two words. I mean, no one knew whether it was going to be countries or what. But the president in that moment was able to articulate a sense of who we were as a people. And whether or not you joined the Peace Corps, many people, Republicans and Democrats alike, saw themselves joining a larger purpose. We need a whole new generation of storytellers. We need the networks, honestly. I don't want to pick on anybody here, but if you turn on the news, you see nothing about common purpose. You see only conflict. I know it works, so don't get me wrong. I know that gets good ratings. I know it gets people all this stuff. I know people watch it. I know we're responsible as consumers for all that, so I'm not pointing the finger at anyone. But man, oh man, do we need a new story.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't.
And Maria should be up here.
Yeah.
What's the brand, Maria?
No, and I was going to say, Maria, you realize that you're booked for next year's panel already, right? So that your brother just signed you up. No, I know. It's just recently on our network and on my show, we've talked about the Afghan refugee issue and Fort McCoy in Wisconsin, where there are 12,600 Afghan refugees being held in the community around it, the way they feel about it, the way they're either supporting or opposing out of fear, ignorance. The Mariel boat lift back in 1980, I think it was, they also, from Cuba, they had Cuban refugees there, and some have a bad distaste in their mouth for what happened. I mean, it's about educating people. And
it is, but if you take, sorry, then I'll shut up.
No.
I see the clock finally turned on. I thought we still had 60 minutes. But,
I was thinking we had a long time.
Our little group started a little incubator for projects that cross divides. We call it the Office of American Possibilities. Created something called Welcome.us. Over 100 refugee-serving organizations, military, veterans, faith-based, you name it, joined together in common purpose, launched, got 1 million hits on the website the first day.
Wow.
Republicans and Democrats, heartland, coastland, young, old, rich, poor, black, white, all gendered, sexual identity, disability identity. People saying, those people risk their lives for our freedom, let's share our freedom with them. Now, that's a powerful story. It's not as easy to tell as the story of conflict or people that will come on camera and say, I don't want those people in my neighborhood. There are going to be some, But 80% of Americans are excited about welcoming Afghans. What an amazing story.
Right?
It's an amazing.
What an amazing story. What a testament to young people, to government, to political leaders, Republican and Democrat. What's the state that wants the most refugees right now? Utah. Maybe California is competing. I don't. But you know, if we make it about, I hate to say this, if we make it about Democrats triumphing, guess what? We lose the climate struggle.
Yeah.
If it's not bipartisan, guess what? We fail.
And if I could
don't know if that seems uncharitable to Governor Newsom, who's led on this stuff, but if he can't bring, I mean, I think you would say this, right? If he doesn't bring the other party into a position of ownership, and we split the issue and we make climate a Democratic winning issue at the polls, we lose the climate battle.
I love what he says, and I want you to respond to that. But tell me, in the vein of when you don't have everybody on board, what is the root cause of not having everybody on board? Because I mean, Tim makes perfect sense. I mean, who can argue with it?
On board with service?
On board with service. I mean, I'm wondering if it's about. I always figure things like this boil down to money. Oh, we don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a lot of it?
No, there's a lot going on, and I absolutely agree with Tim on several of the things he said, and the governor would agree in terms of how we have to bring other people along, which is why we're focusing so much on uniting Californians in service, or whatever word we come up with. That is a better word to do this work. Listen, if I was going to be a cynic, I would say that there is or has been a focus by those who don't want to change to keep the status quo of disempowering people, of feeling like you can't make a difference in your community, you shouldn't be involved in government, and it paralyzes people. We see it on climate change. People feel like they can't make a difference. It's too big of a problem. And so what do? We do nothing. Or we say, and we say that about our country. It's other countries, it's a global issue. Well, but then no one actually takes the first step. And so what we need is, and this is what we're trying to do in California, is leaders, from the governor to business leaders to university leaders to mayors, to say to people, we need you, you are important, you have something to contribute. And Tim, I think, hit it on the head about needing a new story, and I honestly think if we reflect upon the purpose of this panel, we also need to tell a different kind of story about the American dream. Because we talk about the American dream as being about financial and economic success, which of course it is. But if you think about why people come to this country, it's about the fulfillment of our political freedom. It's about expressing and exercising our ability to actually change the world around us, to have a say in how we organize ourselves, how we treat each other, what values we want to pursue. And service, whether you're an elected official, a teacher, a Climate Action Corps member, or just a neighbor helping your neighbor, is how we express this incredible ability we have to control the fate of our communities. So I actually think when we talk about the American dream and about how to ensure it, we have to make sure that everybody feels that they have a way to contribute in a meaningful way. That is the promise of democracy.
Yeah.
And it's quite frankly, it's a privilege, but it's also a responsibility. And we need our leaders to say to everyone, not only do you have the privilege of being an American and the ability to pursue the American dream, you have a responsibility. And here are the opportunities we're going to give you to express your responsibility.
So let's drill down a little bit on the logistics of this kind of thing, because everything that has been said on this panel is brilliant and can speak to our hearts and souls, right? But when it comes to Eduardo's point, getting access across the spectrum for people to be able to serve in some way, and again, we've got to think of a new word, I agree with you, Tim, but I know that California, you have a pyramid, and it's a structure of how California is approaching this, so talk about that.
Yeah, we're very proud. We call it a pyramid of service. And the idea is at the tip of the spear, the top of the pyramid, where there are fewer people, we have formal service programs where you can spend a summer or a semester or a year dedicating your life to serving your community, and we're gonna give you a stipend to do that, and we're gonna give you a scholarship of up to $10,000 towards college to do that. But we also know everyone can't do that. Everyone's not going to go to college. Everyone doesn't have a year. So we're creating in the middle tier of the pyramid the opportunity for everyone to volunteer in their community, to connect with a local nonprofit, whether it's on an issue of at a food bank or on climate or to tutoring. But you can take some time out of your life to connect with the local nonprofit. And then at the bottom of the pyramid is how we're calling on everyone, how we're saying to every Californian, you have something to contribute, you have some value that is necessary for us to tap into if we're going to tackle climate change, if we're going to tackle homelessness, if we're going to tackle poverty, and we're going to educate you on how you do that. We're going to empower you, give you the resources to do that, but most importantly, we're going to call on you. It was said before, we need leaders at all levels, political leaders, business leaders, education leaders, to say it is your responsibility as an American, as a Californian, to step up and take action in your community. And what we've seen through history, not just over the last year and a half, where literally tens of thousands of Californians have stepped up when the governor called on them to volunteer at a food bank when COVID started, but throughout history. Look at World War II. People were willing to ration, to do Liberty Gardens, to buy war bonds. For some reason, as a society, we stopped asking people to do things. And I actually think, and you mentioned this earlier, young people are hungry to be able to see how they can make change in their community, and it is incumbent on us as adults, as leaders, to absolutely invest in the ability for them to have that opportunity.
Yeah, so that's the state of California. Abby, you take it a step further. I mean, your group is the Global Citizen Year. Is it something, can you reach out to governments in different countries? I mean, is there a way to unite everybody and organize something so that a kid who's in Miami can say, you know, I'd like to go to Spain, or I'd like to go to Russia? And I mean, how difficult is it to get everybody on this? What are the big challenges?
So with all due respect to your father, Tim, I think we need to reimagine the Peace Corps for the 21st century. I think it has been an incredible template, but exactly as you said, if we were to design it today, it would look so different than it did in the 1960s. It would look different in terms of who's included. How do we make this accessible and more reflective of society's diversity? It would look different in terms of its core purpose, which is not to send young people out to help or to serve, but actually to learn and collaborate and build empathy and connection across lines of difference. And I also believe that to launch something in this day and age, it needs to be global in nature. So we are reimagining what this can look like as a global project, calling on companies, governments worldwide, young people from around the world who are hungry to get in the arena and learn to make change in their communities, to join us in taking a year to learn who they are and who they're becoming before they make decisions about what happens next. We need philanthropies to step up in big ways to see that, you know, incremental change here is not enough. We need scholarships that make this accessible. We need storytelling that crafts a new narrative that says taking this year doesn't get you behind or off track. It's the thing that catapults you ahead. It helps you develop what we like to call the real skills of the 21st century. REAL, resilience, empathy, agency, and leadership. But leadership not as an arrival point, as a title, as a position, but leadership as a practice of knowing your own power to create change wherever you find yourself. So we see this as a global project, and we see that 2021 is the moment that we could have a global call to action for a generation to learn how to become the kinds of leaders that our world needs now.
Given where we are, the audience that is here with us and those that will be watching, largely a business community, what's your pitch? What's your pitch to an organization and to say, this is why you need to invest in it? You're going to get a return on this. May not be necessarily monetary, but there will be a palpable return. I mean, explain what you would say to them.
So specifically to leaders in the business community, think about who you're most excited to hire. Think about what skills they bring. Think about what experiences they have. Think about whether those are things that you or they learned in a lecture hall or in a traditional study abroad where we still send young people out to sit in a classroom with other kids from the US learning from an American teacher. It's how can we take advantage of what it means to have an immersive global experience that helps you rebound from failure, that helps you speak another language, that helps you bridge divides, that helps you be at ease with ambiguity so that you're not just a problem solver, but you are a solution accelerant. Think about the need for a pipeline that is more reflective of society's diversity. So the pitch here is you can't afford not to invest in a leadership pipeline that does more from move straight from high school into college, checking boxes, earning degrees, and then arriving without the real skills that are needed to lead and thrive.
Yeah.
Can I add to that pitch
Sure.
just quickly? I forget who said it, but somebody once said, democracy is good for business. And what Abby does is provide the foundation of our democracy, which is service. Literally, it is to serve each other and to form a government where we serve each other. And if we don't provide these opportunities that Abby's providing, it's not going to be good for anybody in this country.
Yeah. And I want to go back to you, Tim, about what you said. I loved when you were talking about how 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds can be educated. Of course, this comes from you, Dr. Timothy Schreiber. I mean, you're an educator, you're an author, you're
Not
a
the
filmmaker.
kind of doctor you want.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, don't worry.
But anyway, how is it that we need to reimagine, I don't know, is it the literature? Is it the books that kids read? Is it the family dynamic? I mean, how do we incorporate those empathic philosophies and characteristics to teach the kids about listening to others and understanding what conflict is? I mean, I was fascinated when you said a 4-year-old can get what conflict's about.
Yeah. Well, the good news is, I mean, if you want to, if you look at the building blocks, first of all, I'd give Abby the money after that pitch in a minute.
Yay,
Just
good.
like, if there's foundations in here and I were signing the checks, it's like done. That's good. Yeah, that's a good pitch, by the way. That you've
On the
got
spot,
it.
too.
Really
good.
Very, very beautifully stated. We know how to teach these things. The issue here is not knowing how to teach self-regulation. You can teach a 5-year-old how to turtle. You sit in your chair, you put one arm, you guys can do this with me if you want, one arm on one shoulder and one arm on the other shoulder.
Come on.
And if you feel angry, drop into your shell. You're a turtle. Dr. Padron, will you do it with me? Apparently not.
Come on.
Drop into your shell, take 3 deep breaths. You remind yourself that you can handle the situation. I can do this. And when you're ready, you come back out of your shell. Now that's a less than a minute exercise. It can be taught in less than half an hour. It can be used throughout your life. It's a very simple invitation to a kind of self-regulation, self-witnessing practice. Some people will expand that to say, well, we've got to get to TM, or we've got to get to mindfulness, or we've got to get to centering practices in the various religious traditions. But the core experience of being able to know what you're doing and feel empowered, the agency to act based on your own desire, is a critical link, I believe, in what Abby was describing as what enables you to see yourself as learning the language of the other. It's just the beginning of empathy. There are lots of skills. I could go through all these skills which we could teach, and which we are teaching. But here's what happens. The social and emotional learning movement, which is widely supported by Republicans and Democrats, widely supported by strong evidence, widely supported by teachers and practitioners who want to teach this more, want to be trained to use these skills in classrooms, pedagogies, and so on, is now, guess what? In the last 6 months, we've been accused of being white supremacist and critical race theory. Both. Now, that's an incoherent culture looking for reasons to fight. They're not paying attention to children. I'm sorry to say, but both sides. So both extremes in our political discourse have chosen to pick this as evidence of the other side's horrific intentions. Now, you can do a lot of things on either side, but it's very difficult to be both white supremacist and an advocate of critical race theory. That's a hard, so we know it's not making sense. So I think, I'm just going to come back to this, I think the big service opportunity is for us to figure out how to bridge the elephant in the room divide. which is our political and cultural divide. I mean, I know that's not what we do in City Year, it's not what we do in Peace Corps, but the first rule of Peace Corps still holds. It was not, my dad understood this, it was not perfect, but he understood this. Learn the language. Yeah. You live in the other person's community. You don't go, you know, what many people did for years, they live in expat housing and come and dig your wells and, you know, build your schools and, you know, finish your bridges and go back to expat housing. Not in the Peace Corps. First rule, learn the language of the other person. And it didn't just mean the spoken language. It meant the whole language. Learn to understand, listen deeply to the other. Your job is not to tell people who the American is or what your skills are. Your job is to bridge the gap. And to do that, you have to be the one who offers him or herself willingly to the task of learning, listening, being present. So I just think we have something to do to expand service for young people, but we have something even equally important to do to use the lessons of service to inform our cultural problems, because again, I'm just going to be a broken record. We can do all we want with kids, but the kids are watching us. And they're going, you're telling me to be empathic, you're telling me to be a good listener, you're telling me to presume positive intent, you're telling me to trust the country, and meanwhile, you're destroying all those things by the way you act.
Yeah.
So stop being a hypocrite.
Yeah,
And
practice what you preach. Yeah. We have a man here who has done listening for a few decades to those kids in Miami and the others with whom you've been, you've encountered. And I'm curious what you have heard. What has been the loudest cry to you about what they want from volunteerism? Is it skills to become a professional in some way? Is it just about getting out and seeing the world? Is it about understanding their community better or other communities better? What have you heard from them that they're yearning for?
Well, let me first say that it's very difficult to disagree with anything that has been said here today.
There you are.
We are all members of the same choir. We all stand for the same thing. But the thing that worries me is that we should not waste away this generation. You know, I was part of the me generation. It was all about me and what I would get and how much money I would make and all that. This new generation, I'm fascinated with it because it's a generation that is thirst for having a sense of purpose, of making a difference. They want to be change makers. As a matter of fact, we stopped using the word service to a great degree by calling them change makers. You want to be a change maker. They want to make a difference. And you are absolutely right. On the one hand, they want to do that, but they look around what's happening today in society, and it's very discouraging. And what they want to get out of it is the idea that they made a difference, that they, in fact, did something that they could see something tangible that happened as a result of their participation. And that is a wonderful feeling because it's something that they can identify with, that they can see the value of it. And I think it adds so much to their education and to their formation as a citizen. And I feel it's almost revolutionary in the way that it's happening. And I personally happen to feel that none of this would really become national unless there is a national call to service, call it whatever you want to call it, but a national call when you have all kind of organizations, religious, the corporations, all parts of society coming together with national leadership and really calling for this. And I know we have all those barriers of all these things that are happening in society, but we need to be more positive. We cannot just lament what is going on today.
I agree.
We need to work against that.
Yeah.
And I really feel that the moment is here, and we need to call on our national leaders at all levels, in all sectors, to be able to, we're losing a very important part of our democracy. And as I said at the beginning, democracy is not just about enjoying the privileges of democracy. the American dream, as it was well said, is not just about making money and being rich. The American dream is about having the rights that we have enjoyed for so long in this country that allow you to be yourself and enjoy those freedoms. But with that comes responsibility. And we are not necessarily instilling in people today that responsibility, which is so important. So I don't know how else to answer your question, but to me, it is a complex issue. But in the end, it's not that difficult if we make it a national purpose.
So we've looked at this on a real macro scale. But Josh, I'm going to let you wind down the last couple of minutes we have here, because you have a program in California that's about really neighborhood. Kids, young adults going neighbor to neighbor. And it's one of those things that sometimes, people's heads spin when it gets too big, or I have to do a whole year of service or a semester of service, when actually you can get out in your backyard and you can do it, and California is helping to support and inspire that. So give us that just individuals can do as well.
Well, it's very kind of you to let me talk about this. It's something that we're very proud of in California. Governor Newsom talks about it a lot, a neighbor-to-neighbor campaign and an initiative. And it's part of the theme of saying that service and giving back and helping is not just for those who can take a year, or can join the military, or want to go into teaching. It's literally for everybody. Mm-hmm. And not only is it for everyone, we actually need everybody. So when COVID started, we launched the Neighbor to Neighbor campaign for people to check on their neighbors to make sure they had food, to make sure that seniors had the drugs that they could get, or a ride to the hospital. And it's honestly proven to be one of the most powerful things that we've done, because it empowers everyone. It says to everyone, you have value, you have something you can contribute, and we actually need you. And it's proved very successful. We're just starting to build it. We hope we can continue to build it, and it's how we're going to empower the 40 million people that call California home. I just would, if I can conclude by saying, Tim's absolutely right. We have a cultural and a spiritual crisis in America right now. And for us and for Governor Newsom, service, or whatever we end up calling it, is one of the ways, in a powerful way, that we discover our common humanity. It's my experience from being in the military, where you learn to accomplish great things with people that have a very different perspective than you, a very different background than you, and you do it around a common purpose, a common mission, a common experience. And if we can have leaders who call on us to come together to discover our common humanity, and we can do that by working around helping Afghan refugees, by working on climate change, by working on education, all of these different issues, then I think there's hope for this country, and there's hope for the next generation.
Applause all around. Well, this has been wonderful. I knew that we would end in the 15 seconds we have left before we're going to be cut off, that it would seem dissatisfactory in terms of what we could have continued with. But nonetheless, thank you, Abby. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, Tim. You guys are inspiring, all of you. And you're my heroes from this discussion today. So thank you so, so much. And to all of you for joining us. Thank you.